Hey guys, Starshaped here. I just want to make a quick video about the WCA North American qualifiers. They're going to come up pretty soon. Up until now, we thought that it would be a worldwide kind of second chance qualifier, but as it turns out, it's going to be only for North and South American players, which has received a lot of flack, understandably so, I would say. But it's not as bad as you might think. A lot of people, I think, are reacting a bit too extremely, saying that, oh, anyone from Europe or anyone from China or Korea would easily qualify uh, in this qualifier, and so it doesn't make any sense to give two slots to Americans, and it doesn't really make sense to give two slots, but I would like to see at least one. So what I want to do in this video quickly is just go through a couple of the players from North and South America that I can think of off the top of my head. I wrote them down. Just kind of go through kind of the current players and possibly some players who might make a comeback for the tournament. And I'll try to show you that there's quite a few good and interesting players from North and South America that we could hope to see in the qualifiers. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun. There's going to be good competition. So just trying to show some positive sides of the North American and South American only qualifiers, especially if it can bring out or bring back old players. That'd be really cool. So I'm not going to talk about like the really old school players because they're probably not going to come back, but I've kind of divided this up into current players and a bit more old school retired players who were known back in the day. So we'll start with the current ones, and the first one I'm going to mention is Furphy. I don't really know how to pronounce that, so I apologize. I'm going to say Furphy. I think he's from Taiwan / United States. I'm not really sure how that works, but I think he's American. He's a human player. Probably a lot of people know this name, but I guess he doesn't really play that much in like the cups and stuff. But a very strong human player, very strong. Probably like 70-80% on W3 Arena. A very interesting style. A lot of one base. Tech builds as human. Almost never expands. Never makes towers. So a lot of knights and stuff. Yeah, so that's probably one of the big favorites, I would say, if it's going to be only North American and South American players. It would probably be Furphy. Very strong player. So I'm going to move on down. I'm not going to talk too much about them because I don't really know the details a whole lot. So I'm not going to pretend like I know all the players. But this is just from like my own experience and from what I know. So I'm not going to go too much into detail because then I'll probably just be wrong. So my next player is HTRT, also known as John Irenicus or Irenicus, aka Piz, I think. He has a lot of alternate IDs, but it's a Canadian human player. Probably no one's heard any of these names, but I think he smurfs a whole lot. Like every time he plays, he smurfs. He does a lot of Blood Mage play, one-base Blood Mage stuff. Almost never expands as well. He's probably one of my favorite players from the North American scene. That's where I learned about the Paladin Riflemen against Undead, for example. And he also did some really cool one-base stuff against Night Elf, like Blood Mage Knights against Night Elf and all that kind of strange, those strange strategies that I really enjoy to see. Probably I'm going to put him up there almost as good as Furphy, skill-wise. Very strong player, but he never ever plays like cups or anything like that, so probably no one's ever heard of him too well. But very strong if he does decide to play. So moving on, we have FK, the American Night Elf player who inspired me quite a bit when I switched to Night Elf because he's also one of those players who loves Huntresses, so he would go Huntresses pretty much in every matchup. Maybe not so much against Undead. He would do a lot of Beastmaster archers and more standard stuff, but Keeper hunts and Beastmaster hunts against Orc, Priestess hunts against Night Elf, Priestess hunts against Human as well. So one of those players where not the best micro, quite low APM, but a very clever and smart player, I would say. He's quick on his feet, from what I remember, and if he comes back, that'd be a lot of fun to see. At least personally, I would really like to see him play in the WCA. I actually haven't checked I probably should have checked who was signed up, but this is without knowing who has actually signed up so far. The next one I'm going to mention is Insuperable, the Canadian Undead. I really don't know anything about this guy. I just know that he's a ladder player. He has a pretty strong win percentage, pretty strong player overall. So probably he should play, and if he does, probably some good games. Uh, Danger is quite old school actually. I remember him from quite a while back. A Peruvian orc player, very strong, very kind of cookie cutter orc, like standard orc robot, I guess, but very strong back in the day. So it'd be cool to see him make a comeback for this as well. Not a whole lot to say though. Nerzul is also a Peruvian player, is an undead player who's quite active these days. Probably not the best. Uh, Probably wouldn't have not a huge chance in qualifying, perhaps, but has an interesting style. Plays a lot of Lich first against human. I think there's some Crypt Lord strategies he uses as well, so that could be fun to see. Then we have Acid Rain. I wasn't really sure if I should put him in the current or the old school lineup, but I'm pretty sure he's been fairly active here and there. American human player, never was like a top American player, but definitely up there, very strong. Not too standard, I don't think. Like from what I recall, he played a lot of like Dark Ranger, Tower Rushing as Night Elf, and a lot of Tower Rush and abuse strategies. So that could be fun to see as well. Then we have Orange, the American Night Elf. I'm not too familiar with him, other than like chatting in replays and in games. Like he's always around, but I haven't really seen him play that much. But I think he's just like a standard Night Elf, pretty good. He recently released a very comprehensive Night Elf guide series on YouTube, which is very nice. So hopefully we'll see him as well. Then there's Tricksta, American undead player. I think he was really good back in the day. I'm not really sure how good he is these days, but I think he plays quite a bit. Well, at least he has recently. So that would be another name to look out for. Got to mention Kodos Forsaken. Obviously he could play this as well. Again, not the best player. Probably wouldn't really have a realistic chance of qualifying, but a very interesting style. Kind of Blade Master fast tech. I guess it's not really fast tech. It's like Blade Master, Mass Towers, and then tech style, which is I think quite fun to see. It's quite fun to play, but it's a nightmare to play against. And then so here's my comeback question mark category, and this is just from my own memory. So I probably missed quite a few, but it's also like the more recent old school players, nothing too far back. So I'm not going to mention like Wizard or stuff like that. So I'm going to start with Sankey. Probably the best human, American human, I guess of all time. Had a very famous rivalry with Long Walk in all the American events. So it was always between them two. So just a very strong, solid human player who I guess could probably come back for this. And then obviously Long Walk, probably the best American player I guess of all time. Pretty much won most of every American event as far as I can recall of the more recent ones. Obviously a lot against Sankey, the finals. Cruncher, and I guess like all these players, pretty much all of them are going to be human. For some reason, all the American players are human, except for Long Walk. But the Cruncher, another very strong human player back in the day. He actually, I think, won a Zotac at some point, which is, I mean, that says a whole lot. Like if you're gonna say that American players are bad, well, I mean, this guy actually won like an international cup, so he had to face the best of the best, and he could still win a cup. So definitely some talent there as well. Shriek, one of my favorite players of all time. I really love watching his games. Not really a good player. I mean, he was kind of like a gimmick player. Whichever team he played on, they would just put him on Lost Temple, and he would mass towers and expansions. So he'd always win Lost Temple for his team, and then he'd lose the next game because he can't really abuse the other maps like he can in Lost Temple. And Lost Temple isn't around anymore, so I'm not really sure how good he'd be, but a very interesting player nonetheless. Box, don't really know that much about him. I recall him in among all these names. Kind of like Acid Rain, I guess not as good as the rest, but still a very good North American human player. I think he made a lot of maps, like designed a lot of maps. He had like a website, like custom maps and melee maps and stuff. And I'm going to mention Raspot, which is a Mexican human player. I haven't really seen that much. I just know him from, I think he qualified for the last WCG, where I think he went 3 Militia Tower Rush every game and just lost in the group stage. But he qualified at least, so definitely the best Mexican human. Maybe he could show something. I think, yeah, Holy Human as well. Don't know a whole lot about him either. He might be a bit too old school even. Definitely not like one of the best players, but he was around there. and could upset if you played. Like, it all depends, I guess, on how well these players would prepare and how far in advance. So then I'm gonna also mention Axelav, one of my personal favorite players of all time. I put him as Nidalf slash random, but I think his main race would be Nidalf. He also played a lot of mass hunts. He played a lot of unique gimmick strategies, like Tarn Chieftain first against human, or Hippogriff Riders against undead, stuff like that. Just very insane creative play. Not the best player, but very fun to watch. And my final one is Deuce, which I think he qualified for a few events, like American events, like regional, before you could go to like the Battle.net season finals. You had like the North American preliminaries, and he would qualify for those, but I don't think he ever got further than that. So just a pretty good undead, I guess, from America. And that was just a short list that I got off the top of my head. Just wrote them down. So quite a few known names, quite a few interesting names, and quite a few, I'd say, like modern names that could upset and show some great games. So let's try to see the silver lining here with the WCA North American qualifiers being only for American players from North and South. There are a lot of good players. There will be a lot of good games for sure. Hopefully, if the organization is handled well. So that was all I wanted to say. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope you guys can see the positive side of this. Even though I'm disappointed that I couldn't try for another qualifier, but for the sake of the game, I think this could be nice. Like, if we could see a resurgence in the American scene, that'd be definitely worth it, giving these 2 slots. So yeah, I'll see you guys around. Thank you.